We're parents, teachers, and educators, and like you, we're passionate about restoring our culture for Christ. This is Veritas Vox, the voice of classical Christian education.
Hello again, this is Marlon Detweiler with Veritas Press and Veritas Vox, the voice of classical Christian education. Today we have with us Crissy Lodmell. Crissy, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You bet. We will introduce why you're here in just a moment, but before we do that, give us a little bit of background on you, your personal circumstances, your kids, where they are, and how you first became connected to Veritas.
Okay, I'll go for the abbreviated version, but anyone who knows me knows that might be difficult. So my husband John and I have 4 kids. And when our oldest was born, we moved to Texas shortly after that. And that was home for me, back to Texas. And I remember having a conversation with a friend who was my best friend in high school. And she said, Crissy, there's this new school. And Sydney's a year older than your Jack. And she's going to go to school there for kindergarten, and I want you to bring Jack there when he's in kindergarten. And I was like, oh, this sounds interesting, tell me more. And it was a university model classical school, and
Is that in Charlotte by chance?
It's in Flower Mound. It's Coram Deo Academy.
In Texas. Okay.
In Texas, yes, in Texas. So It was just so ironic, the irony of God, because I had said from the time that my kids were little, anything, I love these children dearly, but I just really pray that God does not call me to homeschool these children, because I was looking forward to the day that I could put my oldest on the school bus with his little backpack and send him off to school. And, of course, the rest is history. She convinced me to check it out. It was a university model, so 2 days a week at school, 2 days a week homeschool. I guess God was gracious and gentle with me to get me into this homeschool path. But 5 years later, we moved away, and that was no longer an option. However, all of our materials had been sourced through Veritas Press. And
that school
sourced everything through Veritas. And so I had, and parents bought their own materials for the school year.
So you've got an inventory.
Oh, yes. I was already getting the catalogs, and dog earing and circling. And so I was already very familiar with Veritas. And my oldest was, I think, a year away from finishing all of the grammar school history cycles program. So I definitely wanted him to finish that. And my second was coming up, and the self-paced history classes were being released. And so my oldest didn't get to do those, but we loved self-paced history. I'm a math person, and so I did the math with my little ones every day and outsourced the history. So I'll do math with you, and you go do your history on the computer by yourself, and I'll help you with the spelling, because that was always the trickiest part for them. But yeah, that was our intro, and then we slid into history transition in one of the first years it was offered. He had completed all of those grammar level history classes, and we wanted to keep going, but he wasn't old enough for the omnibus classes, and the rest is history. He's 23 now, and he's in grad school and started doing online classes in the 6th grade. So that's a lot of 11,
long time
12
ago.
Years ago.
Yeah. Very cool. So the oldest was 23 and in grad school. Where are the others?
I have a 21-year-old, and they're all, the older 3 are all Veritas graduates. So 23's in grad school here in Denver studying architecture. And then I have a 21-year-old who is working part-time in healthcare and also going to school here in Denver. And then I have Mitchell, who is 18 and also graduated last year, and he is working part-time and going to school here in Denver. And then I have a junior at Veritas. I thought these were the empty nest years, but apparently my nest is too comfortable.
Yeah, yeah. This empty nest thing apparently is overrated. So that's your students, your kids. But I know there's more to the story here. Tell us what you do now.
So my degree is actually in elementary education with an emphasis in math. And I taught for one single year before my husband and I married and moved to Los Angeles. He was in the military. So, as you can imagine, 22 years old, fresh out of college, so naive and scared to death of LA Unified School District. So I took a job outside of my degree field in Los Angeles. And then I started having kids, and then I started homeschooling. So fast forward to when my youngest started being ready to take online classes, I noticed there was an opening on the Veritas website for a grammar level math teacher, and reached out and uploaded my resume and all the good stuff. And oh, there he goes. His owner has awakened.
I'll get tired of the conversation.
Yeah. So I reached out and interviewed with yourself and with Dr. Bob, and I taught one little grammar level math class my first year teaching for Veritas, and I loved it, and I wanted more, and the stars all aligned. And the next year I moved up to secondary math and taught two different Algebra 1 curricula, to Saxon Algebra 1 and Jacobs Algebra 1. And over the past several years have up a class or two here and there, but now I'm currently teaching Algebra 1 and geometry.
Wonderful. How many sections will you have next year?
So next year I'll have 7 sections. I'll have 2 algebra, 4 geometry, and a brand new class that we're offering. It's a problem solving class. I don't need to try to sell you on it, but I'm really excited about problem solving, and it's an upper level, like juniors and seniors class, and I could not be more excited about that one.
That is great. That's an elective class, and
Yes.
And a wonderful addition to the math department courses. Okay, so you made mention of something that I really want to unpack here, and this is where we're going to focus pretty much the rest of our time. Tell us about the math curricular tracks that we offer at Veritas, and so let's just start there.
Okay. In the grammar school, we have Saxon and we have the Math UC tracks. And I have taught Saxon. I taught all of my children up through Saxon pre-algebra. And that is super solid. I have never taught Math UC. But I'm finding that my kids who come from the grammar level Math UC classes are very well prepared for algebra. So we have those two tracks, and the Math UC is really, I think there's a video maybe on the Veritas Facebook page where Haesung Choi discusses the difference between those grammar level tracks. So that's a really good resource for any parent who is trying to decide which program would be right for their children. But the Math UC is more hands-on and probably does require a little more parent interaction, but the whole goal is for kids to see the math. The Saxon track is solid, time tested, spiral curricula. So kids are getting constant review, and those
I heard
kids
it called spiral. That's a really good way to describe the
yes.
3 steps forward, sometimes 2 steps back, review, and go forward again.
Always going back to pick up those concepts that they've studied before and review them, constant review. So so then they come to me and our other algebra teachers, and I think we have 15 or 16 sections of algebra now, Algebra 1. And there are 3 options, three paths that you can take in secondary math. So our honors level track, our honors prep track starts with Jacob's Algebra and Geometry, these 2 books. And from there, our students, but those are not considered honors classes because they're typically taken in middle school, junior high years. So they don't transcript as honors because they are for those younger age students. Then they move into the Forrester, Dr. Forrester's Algebra 2 and Pre-Calculus Trigonometry book. And that's a 2-year process, Algebra 2 and Pre-Calculus with Trig. And then up into the Larson Calculus book. And if you complete the whole book over 2 years, that's Calc 1 and Calc 2, you actually can earn 3 college class credits. So Calc 1, Calc 2, and Calc 3 dual enrollment, which is amazing. So you could actually do all of your calculus with the exception of differential equations and then some other higher maths at Veritas before you graduate, if you are highly motivated and you stay on that track. But it is rigorous.
Right.
So then the second option is the Saxon track. And I think there will always be a market for Saxon with homeschool families because it is time tested. So our Saxon math classes go up through pre-calculus currently. I believe there is a Saxon calculus book, but we have not had the interest from enough families to offer a calculus class in the Saxon curriculum. So we do have Saxon classes. You can't use Saxon classes for our higher level diplomas if you're in our diploma program. Saxon classes will only apply to our associate level diploma, but that's the diploma level that gives families the most flexibility. And so it would follow that they would have the flexibility in their math options as well. Math UC is our third track, and it is the same situation that it is only offered for our associate level diploma track. And Math UC currently is only offered for Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. And that is where that math curriculum ends for us. I think there is a higher level, 1 or 2 higher level.
Yeah, that's likely to happen at some point. Yeah. So we have 3 math tracks within one school, and the sheer size of the school makes that possible. And it was, as we made the decision to do that sort of thing, and you may have been a part of it. I don't deal with you directly on those kinds of things because of you working with the headmaster. But it was an interesting thing to me to start thinking differently about this, because if it's good enough to produce a classical Christian education of the caliber that we want to at Veritas, we don't have to have one track. And the idea of going to an ice cream store for just chocolate satisfies me, but you may not like chocolate. I'm good with just chocolate, but other people aren't. And so that kind
The more chocolate, the better.
Well, okay, we're the bad example then, at least the 2 of us. But that was an interesting challenge. But now we have this challenge, and I'm hoping you can help parents address it. Which math is best for my kid?
So which math is best for my kid and which math do I want for my kid?
Those are not always the same answer, are they?
Don't always align, right? And so it is a tricky question. And maybe to zoom out just a little bit, my husband and I are both very, very math minded and good at math. And it's sometimes it's hard to even imagine that other people don't send each other math problems for fun. You know, but
I've got some great stories as a kid because my dad was an accountant and he kept me busy when we were waiting for shows to start, like the Audubon Society shows, by giving me long division math problems when I was 6 and 7 years old. I loved it.
okay, well, I'm sorry about the long division. That's the one thing I really did not love teaching my children.
Well, some of it's multiplication too, but you get the point.
Well, so when we started with Veritas with our own children, we knew that our oldest was absolutely 100% capable of doing the most rigorous curriculum possible. And we set him on that track. And he did. And he wanted to. And we were so foolish to think that all of our other children would fall into that same, they would just follow his tracks right down the mountain. You know, why do we think that? They share the same.
I got the skiing metaphor from a woman that lives in Colorado, by the way. I happen to be in Florida at the moment, so I got it. I just can't relate to it.
Yeah, we are on the slopes just about every weekend. So yes, that's my my new metaphor. So then and he achieved an honors level diploma, not highest honors. You can't choose highest honors for your child. They have to choose that on their own. They have to want that. And he didn't want it, and that's fine. He's done just fine. So then our second was in high school, and she was struggling a little bit in some classes. And we said, you know what, we're going to drop this class, and that takes you out of the honors track and puts you in the standard track. And we watched a change, like a physical change, come over our child. The relief that she felt, not having to the pressure. Yeah.
And it really depends on what they want. For some it's pressure, for some it's opportunity. But it's still
exactly. And then there was Mitchell, and you know Mitchell. You've known Mitchell since he was just a little bitty guy. Yes, my child with ADHD. And that, you know, could probably have been diagnosed by any person who spent any time with him in his younger years, but so full of life and delightful and fun to be around. He did the associate level diploma because we needed flexibility, and he needed to graduate because he needed to get off into the world and experience the world. And I think you have some kids like this too, right?
Yeah. Only like 5 out of 4 of them.
Right. Yes. So we have that in common. And then there's Charlotte, who just doesn't even know what she wants to do yet in life. And so we have her in the associate level track as well, for the optimum, the most flexibility in her schedule, and to try so many different things. So with all of that being said, then we zoom back in. It's hard to say, oh, well, my child has to do the honors level diploma, because then you're locked into this one track. And if they're capable and if they have that desire, then that's okay. It works for them. But some kids they're just not that academically minded. Or focused on, you know, all of the details of all of the equations and, you know, getting everything in order and in line in math. So that being said, math, you see, is great for the struggling learner, the learner who needs to see the math, hence the name, and it actually kind of takes the topics just from, and I haven't taught it, to be fair, but some of the topics are in different classes, bless you, than you would expect them to be in. And so the sequence of learning is a little different. The topics are typically covered by the same point in time, like end of Algebra 2, but in a different order. Mm-hmm. And that makes sense to some kids, versus our Jacobs, Forrester, Larson calculus track that really is more of a traditional Algebra 1, geometry, Algebra 2, pre-calculus, calculus. The classes are named the same with Math UC and with Saxon, but the topics are covered in a little bit different order. And Math UC is just a little gentler, I think. The Jacobs algebra and geometry books that I'm so
is it fair to say in terms that its emphasis is to help the visual learner?
Yes. Yeah, the visual learner. So Jacobs algebra and geometry that I teach are really, I mean, probably we have some kids whose parents have them in Jacobs because it is such a great curriculum for the classical education. Who are in those classes, those kids maybe are in those classes a little bit too early, because you need to approach this curriculum with curiosity. Because when Harold Jacobs wrote algebra and geometry, he was very intentional. We don't give the students all the information in class. Jacobs expects them to work through the homework, and the homework takes them from the known to the unknown. And he expects them to work through that homework, looking for patterns and with, a curious mind and putting things together on their own, which is just such a classical method of teaching, letting the learner discover the thing that they are supposed to be learning. And then, of
That's
course,
really well put. I love Jacobs, having looked through it. I've never taught it. I've never learned from it, but I was involved in the process of evaluating it. And that really captures it neatly, as I understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. And he also puts at the beginning of each algebra lesson review. So a lot of families think that review is missing from Jacobs, that it's just mastery learning and, topical concepts by chapter. And that's really not true, because the first set 1, which our students do in every lesson, has 3 problems, sometimes with sub-problems that are review from previous concepts. And then, of course, there's Saxon, which is the curriculum that so many homeschool families are comfortable with throughout the grammar school years. And Saxon really, really grabs you because it's all scripted, up through Saxon, I think 3. And then you move into the Saxon 6-5 and 7-6 and pre-algebra. And families are comfortable with it, and they're comfortable with the way the curriculum works and the way a day plays out with your Saxon book, and it's super solid. When I was teaching Saxon 3rd edition algebra, I would have families message me and say, "I think there's a mistake in the solutions," and I would say, "Nope." Saxon did not make mistakes in his solutions manual in Algebra 3rd edition. We've moved on to the 4th edition now, but no mistakes. It's all correct. So it's so solid and really puts kids in a great spot for once they graduate.
Isn't it wonderful to be able to offer 3 different tracks like that, and really, especially for something like math, where giftedness and ability can be so diverse. Everybody can read a book, and the nuance between what one person understands from a book and another person understands from a book is grist for discussion. But in math, it's not quite the same. And the ability to get through the concepts and to grasp them, master them, apply them, really is there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to it, is there?
There's really not. And I think we see it frequently that there are students who are in Algebra 1 who should not yet be in Algebra 1.
Mhm.
So maturity really plays into
Well, let me
what-
ask you about that, because I've been a driving force for believing that 7th grade was a good place for Algebra 1, but it has a presupposition. And that presupposition is coming up in the system.
That's right.
Being ready for it can be student driven, or it can be how long you've been in the system. And the
Yes.
flexibility, the nice thing about what we do with our online classes, you can be in 7th grade, or in 8th grade for everything, but doing something that would be otherwise Algebra 1 in 8th grade, where many students in the class might be in 7th.
I've had Algebra 1 students in 10th grade, and it's fine. And you know what's so great? We're all the same height on webcam. So nobody knows.
That's a very good point. You and I do look like we're the same height, and I know we're not.
No, we're not. No, we are not. So yeah, sometimes it's obvious when you have a young man who comes on mic and webcam, and he's definitely in the bass section of the church choir. And then we have, some very young 12-year-olds who are not in the bass section of the church choir. But yes, it's a safe place to come and do algebra when your brain is ready for algebra. And that is different for every child. And coming up in the system, if your child started doing Saxon 1 in kindergarten and Saxon 2 in 1st grade, kind of like the perfect little progression, then they're ready for Algebra 1, mathematically ready, but not always, honestly, emotionally ready.
There are other factors, no doubt.
Cognitively ready. Their brains just are not quite ready. So we have a lot of, I preach heavily that there is no shame in repeating algebra at all. Do not push your child to go on to the next math because it's the man who built his house upon the sand. There's not a strong foundation, and everything else is based on a strong foundation in your lower level math classes.
Yeah.
So
foundation is so important to building a strong math performance in a student.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really good. We don't have much time left, and I want to ask you a couple quick questions.
Sure.
What do you enjoy most about teaching at Veritas?
I have families all over the world, literally all over the world. And when they come to Colorado's a destination. I know Florida's a destination too, right? But Colorado is awesome.
These old bones don't do as well on the ski slope as they do on the golf course. That's my story. I'm sticking to it, and I understand that you guys enjoy skiing.
So I have families who come to Colorado every year, and I tell them, I'll meet you at Chick-fil-A or In-N-Out or wherever. When you're driving from Denver Airport into the mountains, you let me know. And it's been such a fun thing to connect with actual live people, for the kids to see I actually do have legs and feet, even though you've never seen them before. They exist, and to hug those kids, and to say, gosh, you are so tall. How are you 6 feet tall and in my algebra class? So yeah, that's been great. I have families in Indonesia. I have taught a young man in Burma and Thailand. He had a pet monkey, bring your monkey on webcam, Peter. I have kids in Togo and South Africa, the United Arab Emirates. I have 3 kids there.
It
Um,
is truly amazing. And, you know, I've said this before in the podcast and many times in other contexts, that was the one unforeseen benefit that I really didn't see coming, was the ability to relate to people of different cultures with the same core values. Biblical Christianity is at its core. And it has been a remarkable thing for students to have that exposure. Teachers too, as you're pointing out.
Yes.
Next question. This one's easy. Will I see you at the end of your gathering?
Oh, absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Can't wait.
Yes. Wouldn't miss it.
We have had Crissy Lodmell, one of our math teachers who teaches algebra and geometry here at Veritas Scholars Academy. And you've been listening to Veritas Vox, the voice of classical Christian education. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.